Your Honor, our live stream went off without a hitch, so it's active at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Greg Sayre, the Administrative Law Judge. I have 1 o'clock, but we have a lot of people who are coming in at the last minute, so I will get started at 1:02.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the public statement hearing for the DPS Broadband Assessment Program, matter number 21-02182. All attendees' lines are muted upon entry. Hearing will begin at 1 p.m. For any technical difficulties, please call 1-800-342-3330. Again, that's 1-800-342-3330. Thank you for your patience.
I have 1:02, so let's get started. Ms. Laneson, are you ready to go on the record?
We are on the record.
Thank you very much. I call matter number 21-02182 in the matter of the Commission's broadband study and mapping pursuant to the Broadband Connectivity Act. Good afternoon and welcome. We are here today for a public statement hearing that was noticed on January 26th, 2022. This public statement hearing concerns the Public Service Commission's study and mapping of broadband service, which means high-speed internet service. In a minute, we'll have a presentation from Department of Public Service staff about this study and what we're looking to learn from the public. The public statement hearings to be held today, now and later at 6 p.m., along with 6 prior hearings, are intended for public input into the study. My name is Greg Sayre. I am an administrative law judge for the Department of Public Service. I'm responsible for presiding over the hearings in this case and any legal procedural issues that might arise. This matter is currently before the Public Service Commission, and the study is being conducted by Department of Public Service staff. The commission consists of 7 members, and we are honored to have 2 of the commissioners online with us today, Commissioner Diane Berman and Commissioner John Maggiore. Commissioner Berman, would you like to make some remarks?
Thank you so much, Judge. Yes, my name is Diane Berman. I'm really happy to be a part of today's Broadband Assessment Program Public Service hearing. My role today is just to be a listener. I've been listening to most of the public statement hearings on this. It's really important to hear from the public on this critical issue. And I plan to be a quiet listener today, but thank you very much for being a part of it.
Thank you, Commissioner Berman. Commissioner Maggiore, would you like to make some remarks?
Thank you, Judge Sayre. I would just echo what Commissioner Berman said. These hearings are very important, and I I have joined her on most of them and have found the public statements to be very informative and useful. So I would want to thank everybody who is participating remotely and taking the time out to make your voice heard. And as Commissioner Berman said, I'm going to sit back and listen. That's my role today. So thank you for showing up.
Thank you, Commissioner Majori. Before we get into the details of the study, I want to explain the other ways that the public can comment in this matter other than by speaking at these public statement hearings. If you did not pre-register to speak at one of the hearings, but you would like your views included in the record, and if you could advance to the next slide, there are a variety of other ways to comment that were listed in the public notice for these meetings. For those of you with computer access, we're showing a slide with the other ways to comment, and all of the details are in the January 26th public notice for today's event. You can make comments by submitting them on the department's website, or by email, or by regular mail, or by phone. And staff will explain in a minute how you can participate by completing our broadband assessment study and our speed test. Regardless of how the comments are submitted, they will be given equal consideration. Comments may be submitted and will be considered throughout the pendency of this proceeding. However, and you'll be hearing this date again a few times from us, because this study needs to be done in a timely way, we really need your input by March 18th. Ms. Valerie Galasso of the Department of Public Service staff has a brief presentation explaining the study and the kinds of information we're hoping to get from the public. I yield the floor to Ms. Galasso.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Valerie Galasso, and I serve as the Chief of Public Policy in the Office of Telecommunications at the Department of Public Service. I'm here to kick us off with a brief staff presentation on the Broadband Assessment Program and talk to you a little bit about why we're here. In April of last year, the legislature passed the Comprehensive Broadband Connectivity Act of 2021. This bill allowed the Department of Public Service to create the Broadband Assessment Program, a program that's now housed within the agency's Office of Telecommunications. This program, whose work will be updated annually, will release this spring New York's first ever in-depth interactive broadband map, detailing the availability and reliability of high-speed broadband infrastructure statewide. We are committed to making this program something that can be used by everyone, not just GIS experts, but we need your input to understand what's happening in your communities. Next slide, please. A little bit about how we're conducting our research. Mapping broadband infrastructure is no small task. That's why we're using a three-pronged approach. First, we're using internet service provider data to help us assess gaps statewide. Second, we're conducting field verification of high-speed infrastructure in the most remote places in New York State. And third, we're hearing straight from the consumer via our broadband assessment survey and through our series of these 8 public statement hearings. Next slide, please. What we hope to learn today. We want to hear about your internet accessibility barriers writ large. Among other topics, we're interested in hearing from those of you who are dealing with the following. You lack internet service entirely. Internet isn't affordable to you. You lack ISP competition in your area. And finally, you don't feel like you are getting the speeds that you pay for. Next slide, please. We have to action today. Our first, as Judge Sayer explained, is to take our broadband assessment survey. We are asking everyone to take the survey and speed test by March 18th. You can visit www.empirestatebroadband.com to take this survey, or if you're unable to take the survey online due to lack of connectivity, you can call our toll-free broadband assessment line at 1-855-NY-BB-MAP. That's 1-855-692-2627. And for those of you who have already completed the survey, thank you. And for those of you who are here today to comment, thank you as well. We encourage you to spread the word about this survey over the next couple of weeks to your neighbors, your family. We're proud to report that to date, we have had more than 22,000 people take the survey. Our final call to action, we at the agency want to make every eligible New Yorker aware of the FCC's new Affordable Connectivity Program. This program provides discounts up to $30 a month toward internet service, and you can visit www.fcc.gov/ACP or call their support line at 877-384-2575 for more information. Thank you so much, and back to you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Galasso. Now I will explain the process that we're going to follow today. The purpose of our hearing is to provide you with an opportunity to tell the commission your thoughts on the issues in this proceeding. The statements you make today will become part of the case record. We have a court reporter joining us who will prepare a transcript of the hearing, which will be included in the official record of this proceeding, so that your comments can be considered by members of the commission. When it is ready, the transcript will be available for view on the Department of Public Service website. This hearing is also being live streamed on the internet. This hearing is not an evidentiary hearing with cross-examination or a question and answer session, but is a forum to hear comments from you. If you have registered to make a statement, we ask that you please summarize lengthy written statements orally and submit the full written statement by email or mail. Because of the number of people who have registered to speak, out of courtesy to the people who are waiting to speak, we also ask that you try to stay within roughly 5-minute time limit for your oral comments today. If you seem to be making a statement that's running too long, I may jump in and ask you to summarize and finish up, in which case you should send in the full details of your comments by one of the alternative means that I explained earlier and that are fully explained in the January 26th notice. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're holding this public statement hearing virtually. Normally, if this were an in-person public statement hearing, people would be allowed to sign up to make statements as they come into the hearing and as long as the hearing is going on. In this kind of hearing, we can't easily identify people as they get on the line to listen to the hearing. So as a result, as stated in the notice, we have asked people to pre-register if they wish to make a public statement at today's hearing. A number of people have signed up and are participating electronically. If you're going to speak, please be sure to use only one audio input and one audio output at your end. Otherwise, we may experience problems with feedback when you're speaking. I will start out by calling the persons who have pre-registered electronically one by one to speak. We will unmute you, and at that point, you'll hear from us and you'll be able to go ahead and make your statement. After we call your name, we'll let you know you're unmuted. Please remember that if you have put your own telephone line or computer on mute, you will also have to unmute your line at your end before you begin to speak. If you happen to have already spoken at a previous hearing, there is no need to make the same statement again, except to the extent that you may have something new to add. Please speak slowly and clearly so that the court reporter can accurately capture your statement for the record. Let's get right into the statements. Our first speaker is David Godfrey, legislator in Niagara County Legislature.
Possibility that the legislator has called in, Your Honor?
Mr. Godfrey, if you are on the phone, could you please hit *3 on your handset now?
Not seeing a raised hand.
Okay, we'll circle back and try and pick up Mr. Godfrey at the end. Our next speaker is Lynn Johnson, the chairman of the Orleans County Legislature.
Again, not an electronic user, maybe has called in.
So please, if you're on the line, hit *3 on your phone and we'll be able to identify you. I'll keep going. Our next speaker is Mary Frances Sabin, supervisor of the town of Van Buren. I don't see you on the list again,
yep.
so.
Maybe, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I don't see you on the list of computer users. Again, if you're on your phone, please hit *3 now and we can identify you and unmute you. Ms. Sabin.
No raised hand, Your Honor.
Our next listed speaker is Jeremy Bellfield from the Lafayette School District. Again, I do not see you on the list of computer users. If you're on the telephone, please hit *3 now and we will identify you.
No raised hand, Your Honor.
Our next speaker is Lori White from Greenlight Networks.
Lori is here. Lori, I will unmute you in one moment. There we go. You're unmuted, Lori. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lori White, and I'm speaking today on behalf of Greenlight Networks. Over the course of the pandemic, the ability for New Yorkers to fully participate, connect, engage, and thrive was largely determined by their access to reliable, affordable, and fast internet. Connection speeds of 25 by 3 became inadequate overnight when at-home screens became the way to connect outside the household. Greenlight Networks applauds Governor Hochul, the Public Service Commission, and the Department of Public Service for proactively seeking input from stakeholders across the state ahead of this once-in-a-generation opportunity to create a New York that truly connects all. Greenlight Networks is currently servicing and/or constructing an all-fiber network in the Western New York, Finger Lakes, Capital, and Southern Tier regions. In most of those areas, a single internet service with at least 25 megabits per second downstream and 3 megabits per second upstream is available, but customer demand for competition that will provide fast speeds, low latency, reliability, and affordability continues to grow. As internet choices become available in communities, the competition leads to lower pricing and better service for consumers. In May of 2020, Greenlight was approved as an emergency broadband benefit program provider. Since then, eligible households received free installation, $100 value, and a $50 credit per month, making Greenlight's 500 by 500 service free to eligible households. Eligible enrollees in EBBP have now transitioned to the Affordable Connectivity Program, with the monthly credit reduced to $30 per household per month. Greenlight's 50 by 50 service remains available to these homes for $20 a month. Greenlight has invested significant resources to implement and market this program. An example is our partnership with Westside Community Services located in Buffalo, where we provide synchronous gig service so students can do homework, families can learn basic computer literacy, have private telehealth appointments in the soundproof pods, or even get the tools to launch an online business. We look forward to continued opportunities to partner with New York State and the Connect All office. And at this time, we'd like to provide our recommendations as we move forward with this program would be to prioritize fiber in publicly funded projects. New York households need reliable, low latency broadband connections with upload and download speeds of at least 100 megabits per second to support simultaneous engagement in these activities by multiple users in a household. The average household has 2.62 people and 25 connected devices that are accessing multiple bandwidth-hungry applications at the same time. The FCC's broadband speed guide shows that each individual additional user, device, or high bandwidth application accessing a single broadband connection simultaneously increased the broadband performance that is needed. As of June 2021, Ookla speed test data showed average fixed broadband download speeds of over 195 megabits per second and upload speeds of nearly 69 megabits per second. A study conducted for the Fiber Broadband Association showed the growth in demand is expected to continue such that peak demand for a family of 4 should exceed 2,000 megabits per second symmetric by 2030. All fiber networks are the only technology that can deliver the secure, reliable, and future-proof connections New Yorkers will need for decades to come. We also suggest that streamlined make-ready processes will enable the residents of New York State to be best served by the Department of Public Service, ensuring that providers can deploy broadband networks and connections efficiently and expeditiously. To expedite the construction of fiber networks in unserved and underserved areas, broadband service providers should be assigned the same attachment privileges rate as the competitive local exchange carriers and cable companies. With regards to digital equity, through the Digital Equity Act, New York State can leverage IIJA funding to develop a statewide digital equity plan. Lack of connectivity is not exclusive to rural communities and cities throughout New York State. Should have similar access to funding and resources as aging and/or neglected infrastructure has disproportionately impacted these communities. Digital navigators within homes and community renewal and/or Department of Social Services could serve to significantly increase the number of households participating in the Affordable Connectivity Program. An internet connection alone will not bridge the digital divide in communities where adoption and digital literacy are low, but coupling a connection with digital literacy programs that offer training, devices, support, and career pathways provides a path. With regards to state right-of-way fees, we feel that a key deterrent in our build-out of broadband in New York State is the fee imposed by the State Department of Transportation on fiber optic cable in and/or through a state right-of-way. The fee is only for fiber optic cable and does not include copper phone lines, coax cable, power lines, water, sewer, or sewer lines, etc. Additionally, the requirement for survey of the pole adds to cost of construction, adding additional costs to deploy broadband services for households and businesses on state roads. These fees disproportionately impact newer providers and startups and should be waived for all projects, not just those in the Connect All initiative. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much for your comments. I see that David Godfrey, legislator from Niagara County Legislature, has joined us. Mr. Godfrey, we'll unmute you and you can make your comments.
Go ahead, Mr. Godfrey. You've been unmuted.
We are not hearing you. Is it possible that you're muted on your end?
Mr. Godfrey, you might need to unmute yourself on your end. You could also call back in if you're having an issue. 1-800-342-3330 is our technical difficulty line. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll circle back to Mr. Godfrey later. Our next speaker is Frank Cantor from the Fair Internet Coalition. Is Mr. Cantor on the list?
No, Your Honor, but I'm not sure if he has called in.
Okay, if you are on the phone, please hit *3 on your phone now and we will identify you and unmute you.
I don't see any raised hands, Your Honor.
We'll circle back later. Our next speaker is Grant Loomis from the Buffalo Niagara Partnership. You are unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time today and the opportunity. My name is Grant Loomis, and I serve as Vice President for Government Affairs and Economic Development at the Buffalo Niagara Partnership, which is the regional chamber of commerce here in Western New York. The BNP, on behalf of its members who employ over 250,000 people in the region, thanks you for your collection of testimony to bridge the digital divide in our state. Lack of access to broadband is an unfortunate reality in New York. As the federal and state governments prepare to make needed investments to address this problem, it is essential that a plan is in place to ensure these investments achieve their intended goals. The BNP makes the following suggestions concerning the availability, affordability, and adoption of residential and commercial broadband internet access services in the state of New York. First, address both unserved and underserved areas. Broadband efforts have made a distinction between unserved areas, those that completely lack access to broadband and its infrastructure, and underserved areas, those where available speeds are below those demanded. New York must address both issues. In unserved rural areas, significant capital investment is still required to build last-mile broadband connections. Making these connections can cost 5 figures. Few residents can afford to make such an investment. Public resources are required to equip these communities with broadband. At the same time, our broadband needs are changing. The sometimes necessity and growing popularity of remote work and schooling, video conferencing, movie streaming, and online gaming means that communities with existing broadband access now require greater speeds. While providers have invested their own resources into addressing both issues, both also require significant public investments. Number 2, remove the fiber optic right-of-way tax. In 2019, the state enacted Section 24E of Article 10 of the Highway Law. This section charges an occupancy fee for fiber optic cables on state right-of-ways. At a time when governments and providers are investing billions to solve this problem, it is essential that these resources are spent effectively. This tax makes providing broadband even more expensive, wasting public resources and delaying progress. The state should repeal this tax. Number 3, leverage public-private partnerships. The public is best served by private service providers in a competitive market. Broadband networks owned and managed by state or municipal entities unduly inhibit competition and slow build-outs. Government-run broadband programs should be avoided, and public entities should partner with qualified private companies to provide broadband service. Thank you for your time this afternoon and your attention to these important issues.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next listed speaker is Jacob Craniak from the Fair Internet Coalition. Mr. Craniak has spoken before and may just be on this list on a precautionary basis. Mr. Craniak, if you have additional things to add and you're a call-in user, please hit *3 on your phone.
I don't see a raised hand, Your Honor.
Our next speaker is Michael Santorelli. Could you unmute Mr. Santorelli? You're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Michael Santorelli. I am a director of the Advanced Communications Law and Policy Institute at New York Law School. The ACLP has been actively involved in broadband issues in New York State for nearly 2 decades, having offered testimony numerous times before the Commission and Legislature on a range of issues, participated in various dockets before the Commission, and will be submitting written comments in this proceeding as well, and otherwise collaborated with a range of stakeholders focused on helping to bolster broadband adoption across every part of the state. A common theme of our work, New York-focused work has been framing the state's generally supportive approach to enhancing broadband connectivity as a model that other states should follow. Among other things, the state's prior New York grant program offered a ready-made template for increasing broadband availability in an effective and sustainable manner. And since its launch, several other states have sought to adopt the New York model. Why have states looked to New York? Because the grant program worked. It helped drive broadband to almost every corner of the state. Now, a wireline broadband connection of at least 25.3 megabits per second is just about universally available. And when you add in wireless, fixed wireless, and other platforms, the vast majority of the state has multiple options for a high-speed internet connection. Studying the state's enormously successful grant program and related broadband policies offers several lessons that should inform the Commission's study and efforts by the state as a whole. And I'll just run through 5 of those lessons. Lesson number 1 is that for as much progress as has been made to date, there remain certain well-defined pockets of the state that are unserved. Why is this? And as we've heard, because these areas are just too uneconomic to serve without substantial subsidies. This is a theme that has been consistent throughout the public statement hearings and in news accounts from across the state, and will likely be confirmed by the state's forthcoming map and the FCC's forthcoming fabric map. Some areas are just too remote, too sparsely populated, or too geographically challenging to serve without significant public support. Lesson number 2 is that public funding for broadband is best leveraged as part of a public-private partnership. The new New York grant program revolved around such partnerships, which use public funding to attract expert private firms to extend their networks into unserved areas. As the Commission develops its study and as the state develops its approach for allocating forthcoming federal infrastructure funds from NTIA, It is respectfully offered that the state should replicate the public-private partnership model of New York going forward and embrace a technology-neutral approach. Lesson number 3 is that public funding is best used supporting broadband build-out to truly unserved areas. There's no reasonable argument for allocating public funding for broadband deployment in areas that are already served. Overbuilding broadband networks is wasteful and should not be the policy of New York State or any of its subdivisions. Lesson number 4 is that broadband challenges are not solved forever because a grant has been allocated in a particular area. To the contrary, broadband is complex and ever evolving. It requires ongoing investment to operate, maintain, protect, and upgrade a system. So accordingly, policymakers should see as every opportunity to revisit and revise policies that can help unlock additional investment. And everything should be on the table, from rolling back unnecessary fees for right-of-way access to further reforming the state's utility pole regime, further streamlining right-of-way access and making it consistent and predictable across the state, and exploring additional broadband-related tax incentives. Even though some of these are beyond the purview of the Commission, having the expert regulatory agency identify these reforms as critical could help to build momentum towards legislative change. And lesson number 5 is that policymakers can no longer afford to ignore demand-side issues. For as great as New York has been on broadband supply issues, it has not been as effective on the demand side. Broadband issues are complex and require interventions that are tailored to meet the specific needs of discrete communities. As such, it's difficult to implement a statewide strategy because of how much nuance is involved. But that said, funding is critical and should be directed to those community-level institutions and organizations that are best situated to help bring more people online. While broadband availability has grown substantially over the last decade, broadband adoption appears to have leveled off in the state. The latest census data says that the state's adoption rate was around 74% in 2019, up from 71% in 2016. Gains in adoption have been observed in just about every county in the state and across every demographic group, but certain areas remain underconnected despite broadband being readily available. Why does this happen? There are several factors, each of which is amenable to targeted interventions by the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. Affordability is a major factor for many, but that is a complex and multifaceted obstacle that's influenced by many different factors. For example, some still don't see broadband as relevant or necessary or safe, so it will be perceived as unaffordable at almost any price. Outreach efforts could be launched to educate the public about the importance of broadband and how to protect yourself and your data once online. Others just simply don't have enough money to subscribe. Fortunately, federal subsidies are available to help offset the monthly subscription costs and device costs. The state might consider supplementing these subsidies with available Infrastructure Act or ARPA funds to get the monthly subsidy back up to $50 or even greater. It's currently $30 a month. And others just don't have the skills needed to use broadband effectively, making internet access seem too complex. But fortunately, New York is home to many groups that have deep experience in offering digital literacy training and related programs. So in closing, the state finds itself in an enviable position when it comes to broadband connectivity. Prior efforts, notably the New York grant program and a generally supportive policy environment, have helped drive broadband to almost every corner of the state. The task now is focusing all available resources on forging public-private partnerships to help extend networks into remaining unserved areas, and then using remaining resources to address lingering demand-side issues. Embracing such an approach could finally help close the state's digital divides once and for all. Thank you.
And thank you very much for your comments. Our next speaker is Michael Chawaniak. You are unmuted.
Very good. Good afternoon, commissioners and Judge Sayer. My name is Mike Chawaniak. I'm Vice President of State Regulatory Affairs for Charter Communications. Thank you for this opportunity to provide comments in this broadband proceeding. Our company will be offering more detailed written comments later this month, but we also thought it would be helpful to participate in your agency's hearing process. As your agency conducts its ongoing review of broadband availability and access in New York, it is important to recognize that although there are many challenges that need to be addressed, the state of New York is a broadband leader. In the area of broadband infrastructure, New York is very well positioned on service availability, with approximately 99% of the state having access to high-speed broadband. As a result, we would respectfully recommend that the state focus any new federal funds on state and local initiatives that will successfully address the remaining unserved areas, which have been highlighted extensively throughout your hearing process. In the area of broadband adoption, New York has made important progress with competitive providers offering low-cost and free service offerings like Spectrum Internet Assist and the Affordable Connectivity Program, which the agency highlighted earlier in this hearing in your call to action. To build upon this success, we believe that new funding should be directed to effective public-private partnerships that will leverage existing programs to address digital literacy and equity issues. As a company, Charter is well positioned to work with you and to continue to invest in our broadband infrastructure in New York. Today, we are the second largest broadband provider in the US. We serve about 3.5 million customers in New York, and our company employs about 10,000 people across the state. We've been recognized for our performance by a variety of different entities. Most notably in 2021, US News and World Report ranked us the best internet service provider for rural areas. Our company is proud of the speeds we're able to deliver through our network, and our company's unparalleled commitment to service quality was especially evident in its response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our network continued to perform well despite unprecedented demand for service. Finally, we would note that Charter has been a valuable partner in the state's progress by honoring its PSC merger commitments. We extended high-speed broadband connectivity to more than 145,000 households, and those investments and that expansion was at Charter's expense. We had invested over $600 million to reach those previously unserved residents and small businesses. That commitment continues today. Just last year, we invested over $800 million in infrastructure and technology just here in New York. As you consider the path forward, Charter would respectfully suggest that you focus your attention on the following 4 policy areas. Number 1, as I mentioned earlier, funding build out to unserved areas. Establishing a robust grant program that is simple and flexible, can be implemented quickly and efficiently, and includes key policy features that will maximize participation and taxpayer value. Charter has worked successfully with government agencies in a range of states around the country. Here in New York, we're actively pursuing a public-private partnership with several county and local governments. For example, Wayne County recently announced an initiative for Charter to expand our network to reach approximately 1,500 unserved homes. Number 2, implementing poll reform. Just this week, your agency took the important step of issuing a request for comments in your new poll attachment docket. Charter believes this proceeding will provide you with a great opportunity to enhance and streamline current poll rules, most notably as it relates to poll replacement costs, in a manner that will serve to expedite and reduce the cost of broadband expansion. Number 3, and this has been mentioned by others as well, eliminating the problematic right-of-way license fee. Charter is supportive of the governor's proposal to exempt Connect All projects from this DOT fee, but we believe that legislation should be expanded to eliminate these fees for all broadband expansion projects. And then lastly, and importantly, there's been extensive conversations about broadband adoption and affordability, and we believe that the state should prioritize using its resources to leverage and expand a wide range of existing initiatives that can bridge the digital divide. In addition to our Spectrum Internet Assist program, there's been extensive conversations about leveraging the Affordable Connectivity Program that we, Charter, are actively participating in. We also have a Stay Connected K-12 program where we're working with school districts to assist them in offering in-home broadband access. For example, here in New York, again, we had the privilege of working with the City of New York's Buffalo school system and the Buffalo Bills to establish that K-12 program in Buffalo. And then lastly, in this adoption and affordability space, I would just highlight the fact that we are working with a variety of entities on what we refer to as our bulk rate solution, where we work with local governments, housing authorities, and other municipal entities to identify homes in underserved areas and provide them with heavily discounted service. I appreciate your attention today. Again, we look forward to offering more detailed comments in this proceeding, and have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next speaker is Andrea Adler. Ms. Adler, I do not see you in the list of electronic participants. If you're on the telephone, please hit *3 on your handset now.
No raised hand, Your Honor.
Our next speaker is Odette Wilkins. I do see you on the list. You are unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I am President and General Counsel of Wired Broadband, located in New York City. We are a nonprofit organization promoting wired broadband as a superior service for scalability, lifespan, cybersecurity, environment, and health. I have 3 major points to make. First, New York State must give priority to fiber. Former FCC Chair Tom Wheeler calls fiber future-proof and wireless only as a last resort, not a first resort. Therefore, when we talk about broadband, it's fiber first, not wireless. Also, New York State was promised fiber by the telecoms to the premises, and telephone ratepayers have already paid for this. Where's all the fiber that was promised to us? Fiber is the superior service. Fiber is scalable from symmetrical speeds of 100 megabits per second to 1 gigabit per second to 10 gigabits per second. Fiber has a longer lifespan of 25 to 50 years. Fiber is safer and more cyber secure compared to wireless, which is hazardous to our health and to trees, pollinating insects, and the list goes on and on. It is established scientific fact. Just look in the FCC docket. On August 13th, 2021, the DC Circuit Court of Appeals remanded back to the FCC to reconsider its wireless emission safety limits dating back to 1996. The court ruled that the FCC acted in an arbitrary and capricious manner in its, quote, complete failure to respond to comments concerning environmental harm caused by RF radiation, unquote, below the current FCC limits. Thousands of comment submissions of scientific studies of biological hazards from wireless radiation and the hundreds of personal accounts of injuries from wireless radiation. With wireless emission safety limits dating back to 1996, who would want to buy a car or board a plane today whose safety regulations have not been updated since 1996? Also, there is no exemption under the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRA, for wireless radiation, and therefore must undergo environmental review. What insurance coverage can incumbents provide for wireless injuries when there's an exclusion for wireless injuries on insurance policies? Second point, there's the notion of reducing regulatory and permitting barriers. These are not barriers. In fact, regulations and permitting rules are designed to protect residents' health and welfare and to give them a right to be heard. Since the purpose of providing broadband is to provide connectivity, residents' involvement in the process should not be cut off as a barrier. Rather, this notion of barriers is being used to further erect barriers to superior service by forcing residents to accept wireless and inferior service, and a euphemism to erect barriers against residents and to take away their right to hearings and their right to be heard. It's also a barrier to entry for local fiber operators to provide fiber optics to the premises. Residents are being exposed to wireless radiation that they do not want or need. Wireless nodes facing their homes and their children's bedrooms. In Pittsfield, Massachusetts, in the Berkshires, 17 individuals had to evacuate their homes when a wireless cell tower was placed at the end of their street. They were getting radiation sickness from the cell tower for which there was no notice to residents, no hearing, and no consent. Consequently, they had to evacuate their homes because their area became a toxic zone. Third, the barrier that exists is the barrier to entry by the incumbents who are running middle mile fiber past rural communities without serving them, hence the digital divide. This is a barrier against local fiber optic operators who would otherwise take care of closing the digital divide. Other barriers for fiber optic operators are the significantly higher permitting fees for fiber optic providers, as well as occupancy fee taxes. Those barriers should be eliminated to ensure that we bridge the digital divide. Given that incumbent telecom carriers have already received prior government funding to build out middle mile infrastructure, there should be no further need for funding overbuilt middle mile infrastructure. Therefore, the Public Service Commission should require the following from grant seekers. 1, any entity that previously received government funding or grants should account for the funds they received and whether they achieved the results. If they are not able to account for the funds, or if they have not achieved those results, they would be disqualified from receiving further funding. The Public Service Commission should require that all connector nodes in the middle mile be disclosed to local fiber providers. Thank you very much for your time.
And thank you very much for your comments. That completes my initial list of people who have signed up. Let me circle back and see if we can pick up some of the people that we missed along the way. I call first for David Godfrey from the Niagara County Legislature. Mr. Godfrey, if you're on the line, please hit *3.
No, Your Honor, I do see a raised hand, but it's not Mr. Godfrey.
Mr. Lynch will get to you. Unless, well, why don't you unmute Mr. Lynch and we'll see if someone has logged in
Will do, sir.
on the list from Mr. Lynch. Let's go right ahead to Mr. Lynch. Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm not sure why I didn't register when I signed in, so I apologize for the confusion on that. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the topic of expanding consumer broadband access. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Slick Network Solutions. We've been partnered with New York State for over a decade, building out 2,800 miles of fiber, passing close to 30,000 homes across the North Country of New York, in some of the most rural and rugged areas of the state. For over a decade, we've provided symmetrical broadband to our customers via an all-fiber network. And as for much connectivity as we've provided, we continue to have challenges reaching the most vulnerable and underserved communities in our footprint. In this 10-year time frame, we have seen the make-ready costs balloon by more than 400%. In 2014, make-ready costs represented 22% of our construction costs, approximately $4,000 per mile. Now we've seen that increased over 44% of our construction costs, and in some cases, it's routine to see $16,000 a mile make-ready fees, and sometimes in excess of $20,000 a mile. Not only does this exacerbate the capital investments necessary to reach these communities, it also impacts our operating costs, as we are taxed on the cost of construction. In regards to property taxes, the current method is extremely regressive as it relates to rural broadband. Costs are relatively constant regardless of the population density, and so the effect is as your density decreases, the overall tax burden to our consumers increases. This is especially exacerbated by the DOT survey requirement that adds almost 15% to construction costs on state highways, and subsequently with the fee increases the operating costs on state highways to over 90% compared to historic rates. Many of our communities, state highways make up the main street. So in order to reach these communities, we have no choice but to build on state highways, and these fees make it very inaccessible. In addition, we have several areas where there are several miles of state highway and then the pole line ends and it goes into wild forest, so we can't make a through connection. And yet we still have these exorbitant fees that make it uneconomical to serve these customers who need our service. And specifically with the DOT fee, we find that it conflicts with 17 CRR Subdivision 6, Part 131.2, which clearly states it is in the public interest for utility facilities to be accommodated within the highway's rights of way when such use and occupancy does not interfere with the free and safe flow of traffic. So it's already recognized by the legislature that exploiting these rights of way is a critical way to bring development into communities. Furthermore, in addition to the above, and this is from 131 Part 3, telegraph and telephone corporations and cablevision corporations under Article 28 of the Executive Law have the legislative grant to occupy certain types of state highway rights of way without the payment of use and occupancy fee. So we see a conflict within the legislation as to the application of this occupancy fee, which is denying broadband access for thousands of New Yorkers. As well as that, we are also seeking for parity in the application of property taxes. Although companies like Spectrum offer the same services as SLIC, such as TV, phone, and internet, cable companies are exempt from property tax when their facilities are located on private property. Yet companies like SLIC are subject to property tax on private property, creating an unlevel playing field. For over 3 years, we've had this discussion with the Office of Real Property Tax, and because we are founded as a CLEC, we are stuck under the CLEC regulations as not a cable company, even though we're recognized as a cable company by both the Public Service Commission and the FCC. In rural areas, that represents 50% of our facilities are on private property. And so we have a much different tax structure than the cable companies. And we find that this is a real problem to bring both expansion of our services and bring competition to the folks in our footprint who much need it. Additionally, New York State has chosen to tax companies on the grant dollars we receive for our projects. So often on projects, we have bid on them on the economical portion, and we get a subsidy from New York State for the capital cost. But then when it comes to taxes, we are taxed on the entire cost of construction, and that drives up our operating costs. So the situation we have is it's not the capital expenditures that make it difficult to expand into low density areas. It's our operating costs because of state property taxes and pole attachment fees that create a situation where we can no longer afford to serve those customers, even if the infrastructure is 100% paid for. I appreciate your time today to listen to these concerns, and we're glad to talk to you about in more detail and how we can get an equal and level playing field so that all providers of broadband have the same opportunities. I'd also encourage the state to look at the Connect All program and extend the same benefits that Connect All program participants will have to private investments that reach the same goals, such as providing digital equity, providing competition so consumers are going to have choice in the broadband they receive, and reaching unserved areas, whether or not those are paid for by grant dollars. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. I see one or two more raised hands, but before we get to people who are not on the list, I want to finish circling back to the folks that we missed the first time around who did pre-register. Lynn Johnson from the Orleans County Legislature. If you are online, please hit *3 on your telephone. Mary Frances Sabin from the town of Van Buren. Again, if you're on the phone, please hit *3. And either Frank Cantor or Jacob Craniak from the Fair Internet Coalition. We've heard comments from the coalition before. If you've got something to add, please hit *3. Andrea Adler. Again, if you are on the phone, please hit *3. Okay, we have some extra time. I am going to call for comments from people who have not pre-registered but would like to make a statement at this time. I see
two hands, Your Honor. We have Heidi Ames who's had her hand up for a while, and then we have a call-in user as well. Do you want to see who the call-in user is? Because it could be someone you just called upon.
Yeah, let's try the call-in user, and then we'll go straight to Heidi Ames.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your patience, Ms. Ames. Okay, Your Honor.
Hi, this is Shane Bargy. Oh.
Go ahead.
My name is Shane Bargy. I'm the Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Schenectady. Yeah, would you like me to speak, or would you prefer to go with someone else first?
Nope, you're on. Go ahead.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Your Honor, Shane, can Shane spell his name for our court reporter, please?
Yes, it's SHANEBARGY. All set?
Yep, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor, and everyone else for giving me a chance to speak today. As the Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Schenectady, I simply can't stress enough the importance of having affordable access to the internet services for those underserved in our communities. To help ensure this occurs, we simply need programs such as the Spectrum Internet Assist and the Affordable Connectivity Program. We also need to address the digital divide in literacy and access to technology. Boys and Girls Clubs of Schenectady has been very fortunate to work with Spectrum to assist in these areas for several years now. First of all, Spectrum has always provided our organization with either free or reduced internet services for our youth and families. In 2017, Spectrum partnered with us to launch the Spectrum Internet Assist in our Mount Pleasant neighborhood. Additionally, they provided a $5,000 award to greatly upgrade our technology in that old facility for hundreds of families. In 2018, Spectrum built 2 complete technology learning labs with a $75,000 gift for our new Adeline Wright Graham facility in the 2 most distressed neighborhoods in the city of Schenectady. This facility and these labs were critical the last 2 years in particular, as over 200 young people did all of their schooling during the pandemic on this technology in our buildings. Additional dollars came in 2020 and 2021 to support digital upgrades and learning a digital trade for our young people. Our labs are open to our members and families to access the digital world at any time, thanks in large part to our partnership with Spectrum. We have been very pleased to work with Spectrum at helping get the word out in our community about key internet affordability programs, as well as offering these services in our facilities. I'm hopeful that these kinds of services are available elsewhere for those who need it the most. Thank you very much for hearing me today.
Thank you for your comments. And if you could hit *3 again to unraise your hand, then we won't get confused a little later. Let's go straight to Heidi Ames, and I'm sorry to have kept you waiting for so long. You are unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Judge Sayre, and thank you, Commissioners Berman and Maggiore. My name is Heidi Ames. I am from the St. Lawrence County Planning Office, and today I speak on behalf of the St. Lawrence County Broadband Committee. We appreciate the opportunity to provide input to the New York State Public Service Commission. The county commissioned a broadband infrastructure inventory in 2021 and has established a local broadband committee and working group. These comments result from their efforts. A more detailed version of these comments has already been submitted electronically. Broadband infrastructure has been built out in areas of the county where population density allows providers to do so cost effectively. However, many areas remain or underserved because population density does not support build-out. A number of factors put rural, sparsely populated areas at a disproportionate disadvantage over more densely populated areas because construction and operating costs are fairly constant regardless of the number of homes to be served on a per-mile basis. These include property taxes, pole attachment fees, the many times mentioned New York State DOT right-of-way fees and make-ready costs, which have escalated dramatically in the last 10 years. The St. Lawrence County Broadband Committee believes that New York State should incentivize public and private investment in broadband by eliminating these barriers to fiber build-out in the same manner in which coaxial cable and copper lines are not subject to these same taxes and fees. Going forward, all broadband build-out must support and provide a minimum of 100 megabits per second download and upload speed. High-speed broadband should be supported in a manner consistent with how rural electrification and telephony were supported in the early to mid-1900s. Last, New York State should incentivize and encourage competition among internet service providers in rural and urban areas to ensure consumer choice. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak, and good afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Ames. If you could hit that raise hand icon again to put your hand down, then I can search for anyone else who would like to speak at this point. Anyone who is online electronically and would like to speak at this point, regardless of whether you registered, please hit that raised hand icon that's explained in the slide that's now displaying, and we'll unmute you and call on you to make a statement.
I don't see anything, Your Honor. No raised hands.
Let's move to the call-in users. Those of you who have not already made a statement and would like to make one at this time, If you're just on the telephone, please hit *3 on your telephone handset, and we will identify you and give you the opportunity to speak.
No raised hands, Your Honor.
Okay, this is the last call for comments. Again, if you're online, hit the raised hand icon. If you're on the phone, hit *3. Otherwise, we'll wrap up the hearing. I believe we are finished. I want to remind members of the public, and if you could move to the next slide, that they may submit public comments throughout this proceeding by the other means described earlier and in the notice of public statement hearing issued on January 26th. But, and I'll say it again, as we've explained earlier, we really need to hear from you by March 18th to include your input into the study. I thank the commenters very much for their participation. I thank Commissioners Berman and Majori for participating, Joseph White and Sangeetha Kalis from our Consumer Services Office for administering the session, and our court reporter, Annette Laneson. At this time, the hearing is concluded. We'll go off the record.
We're
Thank
off
you.
the record.
Thank you all very much. Have a safe afternoon. Have a good rest of the day. Stay safe. And at this time, we can terminate the live stream and this call. Thank you all very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good afternoon.